Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you for joining. We wanted to seek the blessings of Brother Damodara, Brother Madhav, Brother Shyam Sundar Krishna, Pal Gopal, Gonitai, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, and the assembled devotees. Continue with the Damodar Leela. Coming towards the end-ish, and we'll continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 9th chapter, 19th verse until this 21st verse.
Maharaj Parishit, this entire universe with its great exalted demigods like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and Lord Indra is under the control of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet the Supreme Lord has one transcendental attribute. He comes under the control of his devotees. This was now exhibited by Krishna in this pastime. Neither Lord Brahma nor Lord Shiva, or even the goddess of fortune, who is always the better half of the Supreme Lord, can obtain from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the deliverer from this material world, such mercy as received by Mother Yashoda. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to devotees engaged in spontaneous loving service, but is not as easily accessible to mental speculators, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self.
So this is the exalted position of Mother Yashoda. Very fortunate personality. Of course, very close to the Supreme Lord, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord in more ways than we can think of, because her position is inconceivable to us, actually. But anyway, let's continue. So this is the binding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yashoda Mai had been knotting ropes for hours. Although she decided to stop, by the agency of Yoga Maya, her hands continued the momentum, so she tied one more knot, and that was the knot that bound Krishna. As soon as Krishna was bound, the 100 lengths of rope miraculously appeared and fell in the carpet around him. Seeing this, Yashoda Mai was bewildered. Looking more closely, she saw that Krishna's belly was now bound with the two original silken strings or ropes, or what they call that, threads that came from her plaited hair. Cords. Only those cords could contain Krishna. All the other ropes for churning had been of no consequence because they came from Mother Yashoda. It's also, one of the acharyas mentions that at some point Radharani also provided a cord, which actually was the one that bound Krishna. So Yashoda Mai now consciously tied together the two cords into another knot, and then quickly tied one more knot just in case. She also checked that the knots were still there. Something very unusual going on, she's thinking. Mission accomplished. The transcendental thief has been caught and bound. Now she can move on to the next task at hand. She took the rope that had been tied to the mortar and connected it to the cord encircling Krishna's waist. Then she proceeded to give him one more telling off.
I hope you will now learn your lesson and follow the saintly conduct of your father instead of the mischief of the monkeys.
Oh, here we go. Krishna thought. Again, reference to the monkey insult. Yashoda Mai stood up before turning to leave, addressed Krishna.
You'll stay where you are until I clean up the chaos that you made. In the meantime, there will be no play and no toys. When I'm done, then I should come for you and we will go and see the Diwali celebrations. Do you understand?
Krishna sheepishly lowered his head, feeling completely humiliated before his friends, and whimpered, "Yes, mother." Yashoda Mai embraced and repeatedly kissed his cheeks, saying,
You started this day off as a troublemaker. Now finish it as a good boy.
Telling his friends to stay there and keep an eye on Krishna, Yashoda Mai turned and with a victorious smile invited her gopi friends to help her clear the mess in the house. Again, showing service to Krishna takes precedence. So this is another point where Krishna is left by the devotee for the purpose of serving him. So just like the example we gave last time as well, it comes to mind again, which is Prabhupada leaving Vrindavan Dham at the age of 69 to come to the West. What a sacrifice. He didn't have to do that. He was already perfected. He didn't have to do anything. But he cares so much for us that he came to the West just to give, came to the West and took so much trouble for himself. Unbelievable challenges he faced, which he didn't even have to face. He didn't have to do anything. He was already perfect. So it shows the kindness of the devotees. The remaining gopis teased Krishna.
Oh Prince, now that you're bound, Dhamma, around your belly, Udar, we shall call you Damodar.
His friends joined in called Krishna, Damodar. And Krishna thought, this is how everyone will tease him, insult to injury. As time passed and Damodar Lila became a fond memory, Krishna will treasure that name as one of his favorites. Radha Damodar, Yashoda Damodar, Ki Jai. At present, though, it sounded like an insult, and he made his displeasure known with a frown on his sweet face. As soon as Yashoda Mai left, Krishna cast aside his sad face and forced tears. He assumed a composed demeanor and filled the courtyard with the moonlight of his smile. Making the best of his predicament, he boasted to his friends, "Just see how I kept my mother at bay." The boys answered.
It was a memorable exhibition. Now, tied to this motor, what will you do?
Bound to the motor, Krishna had still found ways to play with his friends. Friends who are pure devotees wanting to play with him as a child. So there you go. Wonderful, wonderful scene. Remembering his predicament, Krishna's eyes would now and then well up with tears. So this is there's two aspects of the Lord, the child, but also the omniscient personalities there within. They're both existing in parallel, both realities, very real. Seeing this, the monkeys became increasingly excited, and his friends lovingly tried to console him. Some boys tried to ease caution as embarrassing by offering him a snack.
Friend, would you like me to ask my mother for some yogurt?
At the sound of the yogurt, Krishna became aware of his hunger. The skirmish with his mother crossed the timelines of several meals, during which he had not eaten anything, but still he was very sharp. Silly, your mother is at my house. Why bother her? Some of you should run to your homes and see what is available. In great happiness, the boys would run home and bring whatever was available and feed Krishna. In this way, they enjoyed a picnic. Then Krishna started to test the motor. How heavy was it? He started pulling the motor. To the applause of his friends, Krishna slowly dragged the motor here and there, occasionally sitting down to catch his breath.
Krishnastu graha kriteshu vyagrahayam matari prabhu adrakshid arjuno purvam kuyako dhanantatmajo. Translation: while Mother Yashoda was very busy with household affairs, the Supreme Lord Krishna observed twin trees known as Yamal Arjun, which in a former millennium had been the demigod sons of Kuber.
So this is another divine aspect of Krishna, which is now going to be exhibited. He's taking the motor towards the trees. His mother's final words to him were still ringing in his ear.
My dear boy, your whimsical conduct has now come to an end. If you think you are so clever, then free yourself of this rope. Go ahead, pull the motor behind you and go wherever you like.
Well, she gave him that instruction. To the delight of his friends, he was pulling the motor. But where would he go? Aware that his mother could easily hear the Gopas cheer, Krishna placed his finger to his lips to calm them. Then he remembered Narad's curse to the demigods. Recognizing the two stately Arjun trees, he decided to invoke his divine powers to liberate the demigods trapped in the trees. Krishna remembered the past lives of these demigods.
Purva Narada Sapena Rikshatam Prapito Madat Nalakuvera Manigrivo Iti Kayato Shriyan Vitaho. Translation: in their former birth, these two sons, known as Nalkuva and Manigriv, were extremely opulent and fortunate, but because of pride and false prestige, they did not care about anyone. Thus Narada Muni cursed them to become trees.
Of course, the devotee's curse is never a curse, it's a blessing. They were the sons of Kuber and lived a carefree life of opulence and sense enjoyment. Unlike their father, who dutifully managed the wealth of both demigods and men, Nalakuber and Manigriva squandered their time loitering in the Chaitra Rath garden. Intoxicated in decorating themselves with jewels, they enjoyed the company of young girls. They were intoxicated not just by Varuni drink, but also by false pride, thinking themselves unconquerable sons of Kuber. Once they were enjoying with the Apsaras within the holy waters of Ganga. Due to arrogance, the demigods had abused the privilege granted them by Lord Shiva and committed the offense of using a sacred place for sense gratification. That was actually Shiva's garden, Shiva's lake, and they're misusing it. So Shiva had sent actually Narad Muni to sort this out. Without notice, Narad Muni suddenly appeared. He was absorbed in thoughts of Krishna's presence. Yeah, Krishna's childhood pastimes. When the Apsaras noticed Narad, they immediately covered their naked bodies and warned the demigods to do the same. However, the demigods were too intoxicated to hear or understand the warnings given by the girls to cover themselves. Narad Muni thought,
the pride of the two demigods needs to be curbed so they can become legible for bhakti. Therefore, I will curse them.
So this is what the devotees always think. How can I bring somebody closer? So even their curse will bring them, the recipients, closer to Krishna. Although it was an offense on part of Narad to curse demigods, yet he also wanted the opportunity or to give to these two demigods to get direct vision of Krishna. Narad expressed anger at the two demigods, not just at their arrogance, ignorance, but also their pride. Nalkuver and Manigriva didn't seem to care, remaining proud and indignant. Narad cursed them to become trees. However, Narad wanted the demigods to advance spiritually. So they are enjoying. Therefore, even in the bodies of trees, he would allow them to be fully conscious of their past offense. Remember Narad's teachings, which he expressed to them for their spiritual upliftment. So that's in the next chapter. Quite a few verses are spoken to the two devatas by Narad. Also, they would be aware of their surroundings. This was unlike normal trees. In this way, they progress to pure devotion. Their progress to pure devotion would not be impeded. Narad Muni thought, I cannot give them a curse that will not result in bhakti. When the demigods heard the curse, in one sense, they were relieved, as it could have been worse. Narad could have cursed them to become demons. However, they made one request.
O Lord, your punishment is suitable. However, if we must be trees, please allow us to take birth in the holy land of Vrindavan. By drinking Yamuna water, by standing in Braj's soil, by being in the company of desire trees, we'll obtain the seed of pure devotion. Narad
was pleased. He completed the curse by informing the demigods that Krishna was to appear on earth after 20,000 years. They would stand in the courtyard of his father's residence, Nand Maharaj's courtyard. After witnessing Krishna's pastimes as an infant, the Lord would personally deliver them from the curse. This is really incredible blessing they were given. Before the Apsara's unbelieving eyes, Nalakuvera and Manigriva disappeared from Kailash and appeared in a faraway Gokul as twin saplings. Narad turned towards the Apsaras, who were motionless in fear of also being cursed. But Narad simply gave them a warning glance. Although they had behaved indecently, they had shown shame and remorse. They witnessed the activities of Narad, and the seed of devotion was planted in their hearts, and eventually they would excel as Vaishnavis amongst celestials. So wherever a devotee goes, he inspires bhakti. This is the beauty of Narad, the beauty of Prabhupada, the beauty of Guru Maharaj. You know, wherever they go, chanting of Hare Krishna immediately, spontaneously takes place. Narad was on his way to Vaikuntha to see Lord Vishnu. But having cursed the devotees of Lord Shiva, he decided instead to go to Badrikaksham and disclose his heart and mind to Narayan Rishi. So in one sense, Narad himself committed an offense by cursing the demigods, cursing devotees effectively. But he was happy to take the offense, the effects of the offense, because he was helping the demigods in an unimaginable way. Having relieved the history of how the two demigods came to become trees in Gokul, Krishna knew that the initiative was his. So this is another way the devotee controls Krishna. Narad had promised the demigods that the Lord would free them from his curse, and Krishna, duty-bound to keep the promise of his devotees, would act according to Narad's will. This is extraordinary. Krishna will fulfill the desires of his devotees. He thought, Narad is very dear to me. For his sake, I will free the demigods, bless them with supreme devotion, and send them back to their abode. It also shows we need the devotee. If without the devotee, without the mercy of the devotee, there's no chance of attaining Krishna. Leaning forward, Damodar began to slowly crawl on his hands and knees. His friends watched. They were a spellbound audience of a drama, too enthralled to move or speak. Sometimes Damodar pulled the motor. Sometimes the motor moved on its own. Both the rope and motor were spiritual forms and could act according to their own will. Both wanted to serve Krishna in their own way. Slowly, the distance between Damodar and the trees was closing. Intently gazing at his destination, Damodar took another few effortless steps while the motor positioned itself between the two trees. For the first time since they appeared, the demigods felt the touch of the Supreme Lord via the conduit of the rope and the motor. They shivered in ecstasy. The Gopas were still up the hill, chatting and joking, fully enjoying Damodar's adventures. But they couldn't move. They couldn't come closer. They were fixed. Krishna had fixed them in that position. They could see, but they couldn't do anything about it. The two trees felt an intolerable pressure leaning against them. Then gradually, gracefully, the stately Arjun trees were uprooted. As the trees fell, their branches and trunks did not touch Damodar. The sound created was terrible. The first sound was the crack of the trees being uprooted, and the second was the crashing of their hitting the ground. The sound was so loud it caused the residents of Gokul to faint in shock. Only Krishna's friends were unaffected, covering their ears with their hands. They continued to sit where they were, calm, fearless. But when they tried to stand in order to help Krishna, they were unable to. Yogamaya had immobilized them. Krishna needed some time alone to deliver Nalakuvera and Manigriva. Thus the boys remained curiously immobile, but able to cast wondering glances at each other. Krishna stood between the fallen trees and laughed just to show his immense progress to the Gopas. The thin rope for churning yogurt assumed such strength by the Lord's mercy. Seated on the ground with his legs spread before him, Krishna entertained himself by flicking the rope and watching it wave to the mortar. He laughed to see the ropes dancing. Although Krishna could uproot the powerful urgent trees, he was unable to free himself of his mother's rope of affection. Suddenly, the two effulgent forms of Nalkuvera and Manigriva emerged from the fallen trees. There you go. They appeared in their original form as devatas. Although they had been naked at the time of being cursed, they were now richly attired in celestial clothes, ornaments, and crowns. Narad had ensured that they would not be unclothed when appearing before the Lord. The demigods rose in the air, and their striking beauty radiated splendor throughout the surroundings. The demigods thought, here is the Supreme Lord for whom we've been waiting for so long. They bowed down before the Lord. Krishna continued to play with the rope and mortar. He acknowledged their presence with a brief glance. However, he seemed more interested in playing than in the demigods. So this is Krishna. He loves this intimate relationship with his devotees, much more than the prayers that are spoken by the Brahmins from the Vedas or the sages from the scriptures. The demigods had a wonderful exchange with Krishna and offered praise to the Lord while the Lord played. In their bewilderment, the demigods just shook their heads and kneeled before Krishna and said,
"We cannot understand your lordship. Trying to do so, we become confused and disorientated. Therefore, it is better that we simply offer our obeisances unto you and chant your names and glories."
This is perhaps indicative of our situation as well, because it's very hard to grasp some of these pastimes. So best we just chant and accept these glories. Krishna then stopped playing and turned his full attention to the demigods. You are right. I am the Supreme Lord. So this is a 2-year-old boy. But you have failed to know me. If you fail to know me, then how can you say, I am who you think I am? So he's teasing the demigods now. How do you know? You can't understand me then. How do you know I'm the Supreme Lord? This confused the demigods even more. And seeing their plight, Krishna showed mercy on the brothers and showed them his two-handed form with the flute. The demigods were in ecstasy and then offered wonderful praise and prayers. Understanding that the Brijbasis will soon be coming due to the noise of the falling of the trees, the demigods asked Krishna's permission to depart. Before leaving, they requested they become devotees, servants of the Gopas. Pleased by their humility, he advised them to go to Narad, and by his grace, Krishna will fulfill their desires. So this is nice painting. He told them that they can ask for a boon, and they asked to be blessed with pure devotion. They also offered further prayers, which made Krishna laugh as he was shackled to the mortar. He thought, these are not only real, these are not real ropes, but bonds of my mother's love. While I am bound by her love, demigods are bound by Maya. Although they call me the Lord of Gokul, I am tied like a calf. What kind of Lord is that? While they praise me, the scolding of mother is so much more pleasing. So Krishna replied, your past life and Narad's kindness to you is well known to me. Had Narad not desired it, I would never have shown mercy to you offenders. That would have been contrary to everything I stand for. However, Narad was kind to you regardless of your offensive behavior and awarded you punishment that will bring you to your senses. He took away the source of your blindness, which was your wealth. By Narad's mercy, you have already been freed from your bondage. Therefore, asking for my mercy gratuitously, had you not seen Narad, you would not be seeing me. Hence, your suffering would have continued. This is really Krishna's glorifying his devotee, Narad. He's even saying, my devotee is much more kinder than I am. I would have never released you from your offenses. But because Narad has wanted it, you are free. Krishna wanted to wrap up his conversation with the two demigods so that he can get on with the more important matter of playing with the Gopas. Raising his right hand in a gesture of blessing, Krishna said, Nalkuvera Manigriva, you may both return home, where your families are eagerly waiting you. As for your desire to be always absorbed in my service, I assure you it will be fulfilled in a way that your domestic life will not pose as obstacle. Whatever you want will be fulfilled by Narad's desire. By his grace, you have developed love for me and thus attained the topmost goal of life. Keep Narad always in your heart, because I am always in his heart. You shall never be separated from me. Your material existence has now come to an end. Nalkuvere and Manigriva were heartbroken to leave the Lord, but they had to. Bowing down one more time, the demigods turned and rose in the sky and sorrowfully looked back at Gokul, which had been their home for so long. They left heaven. So we can stop there. There's probably at least one more session where we can, amazing session where how this pastime concludes, which is so much nectar in it. Any questions or any comments, please? Okay, we can stop there. Yashoda Damodara ki jai, Radha Damodara ki jai, Kartik Maas ki jai.